Independence, ladies and gentlemen. Today's debate revolves quite a lot over the independence of children. And what the opposition here is going to do for you today is we're going to show you why the independence of children is more important over putting all the burden on the parents. So you see today, what I'm going to do in my speech today is firstly show you why the proposition's policy itself is flawed, which makes the entire case of the proposition flawed. Secondly, we're going to point out the connection that punishment has to crime in one of the additional points that the opposition would like to bring up. And we will conclude with the concluding statement on the issue. Now let's examine what the proposition's policy does today. It says that first we have to create a criminal justice sort of type of thing. And then secondly, it says that we're going to rehabilitate them. But what we say, that with the enforcement of part 1 of the proposition's policy, it takes away from part 2 of the proposition's policy, which is actually a bad thing. And what the opposition is showing to you today is that we need to have rehabilitation on its own. Because the problems that come up with punishment and crime comes from the children's actions, okay? So let's examine what the first thing that the proposition talks about. They say that this is about the responsibility of the parents, and parents are responsible for their children. But what we say is that under the proposition's plan, they allow for absolutely no room for learning for the children to learn on their own. And we say that dependency of the children on the parent is actually a bad thing. Now they say that we have a policy that is quite feasible. But again, opposition makes absolutely no room for learning of children on their own. What we say is that a proposition needs to remove part 1 of the policy so that children can learn on their own and so that they can take the steps necessary to learn on their actions. Now we understand that these children are children, but childhood is the time to learn about how to become mature. You cannot say at 17-year-olds they need to make an immediate transition to being an adult. No, thank you right now. We need to teach them from the childhood, and the parents need to take the time to teach them from the childhood. That's why we say that children need to be responsible for themselves. Now they bring up, again, the idea of child reformation. But we agree with the idea of child reformation. We say that we do need to reform their actions, and we say that we need to do that by itself. Now continuing on, I'd like to address the issue of the responsibility of parents. We say that legally, if the parent is knowledgeable of the child committing the crime, then legally in the system of crime and punishment, the parents are the ones who are actually committing the crime. Why? Because they know what their children is doing. And again, the proposition defines this the case to be in regards to responsible parents only. But we say that even with responsible parents, the children are still committing crime. And we say that under the opposition's explanation of crime and punishment and the opposition's explanation of what the legal system is, it is the parent that is legally responsible. So we say that even if we accept their plan, it actually clogs the system of what we're doing today. Because there's no way to determine if the parent is actually causing the problem. Now we say, again, we addressed earlier that they say that minors are not full-fledged individuals, but again, we say that they need to learn what is right from wrong. Now the last thing that they bring up in this second speech is they talk about the incentives that adults have to act appropriately. Well, first of all, we say that there's no proof presented by the proposition for this assertion. And we secondly say that changing the children will work just as well. We say that rehabilitating the children makes it so that the incentive for adults is basically not necessary. And we say that look at the criminal justice system first. Now we'd like to go on to the main points that the opposition, the fourth point that the opposition would like to bring up. We talk about how the institutionalism and the institution in adding the fines and the punishment of the parents actually leads to two major effects. It does two things. It does not stop crime, and in addition, it actually leads to more crime. Now let's examine how this issue does not actually stop crime. It doesn't stop crime. Why? Because children do not understand the responsibility involved with the crimes they are committing. And we say that kids are not held responsible because they know that they cannot commit the crime, and they know that if they commit the crime, they're not going to be held responsible for the action. And this in turn has the impact of allowing criminals to remain at large, because children understand that they don't understand that their actions are having repercussions and effects on their parents. We put up this example. Say, for example, I did not like my mother, and I just wanted to get back at my mother. Well, I could go around tagging up the city using graffiti, and it would be not me being punished, but it would actually be my mother being punished, because there's no connection, no relationship between myself and the parent. Now, it doesn't matter, even if we did have a relationship. My mother could be as responsible as the most responsible parent in the world. But how is she going to know that I am going out and doing graffiti? How is that connection going to be established? And we raised that question to the proposition. Now, we say, in addition, the impact of saying that not having the responsibility is that it makes it so that criminals remain at large, and without the punishment of the children, we say that we have no, the proposition has no way to diminish the system of crime that would stay there.
Point, sir.
No, thank you. So continuing on, we say that secondly, that punishing parents actually leads to more crime. We say that proposition needs to address the fact that in many cases, children do not have direct relationships with their parents. And even if they did, the parents have no way of knowing if their children is committing the crime or not. Now we say that this would lead to increased crime because the children that don't have their special relationship, they don't get along. Yes, madam.
See, even if the parents don't know whether their child is committing the crime, we say it's still their responsibility to be able to prevent that by teaching their children better and being aware of what they're doing.
We understand that, but we say that the parents need to teach their children indeed, but we need to make sure that the children themselves know what they're doing. Indeed, that the parent needs to learn, but punishing the parent completely neglects what the child needs to learn. It completely avoids the issue of addressing the child over the parent. Now continuing on, we say that another thing on the proposition's case is that they completely assume that there is a perfect relationship between parents and children. We say that fundamentally it changed society because it shows that if kids are not being taught that they're doing something wrong, and if kids are not being punished, it teaches kids that we are basically teaching society that, oh, so it sends a message to society that kids are not doing anything wrong. Everything is the parents' fault. But in reality, we need to see what is actually happening. It is the children that are making the action. And we say that it creates a certain mentality amongst the group of kids in society. The logic will come to them that children will simply never be taught that they're doing something wrong. And it will create a holistic mentality that everything happens because of the parents, and everything is the parents' fault. And that all children can get away with horrible actions because everything connects back to the parent. And we, side opposition, stand here to say today that that is not the sense of mentality, that is not what we want to create amongst the children. And then we lastly say that kids are actually biologically different than their parents. And we have to understand that these are two different people. And again, emotionally, there's not always the connection between the two. So we say in conclusion that childhood is a time to learn right from wrong. And we say that it is important that we deter the punishment, because we say that by putting the punishment on the parents, children do not have the actual direct learning, and they don't actually learn what they're doing wrong. So we say that all children are responsible for themselves, and we bring back the team line of the side opposition, to each his own punishment. Indeed, that there's the connection between parents and children, but we say that the children need to be taught what is right from wrong, and to that why we conclude by saying that we need to have children to be responsible for themselves. Thank you.